How's it going out there, YouTube? My name is Jesse, and I am the curator for the Golden Age, and this is another episode of
Lost Origins of the Golden Age.
Yes, this is another Lost Origins of the Golden Age, and this time...
It's about time you did this.
What do you mean?
Reviewed a timely character by Stan Lee.
Stan Lee didn't have the presence in the 1940s that he did in the 1960s, so not every character was done by him.
I thought you were waiting for June to do this.
I was going to wait and do this character in June, but since it was a request, we always cover requests first, I'm doing it now. There's a couple of other requests of characters that I was saving for June that I'm going to do because they were requested. Anyways, this is one of the earliest characters that I remember reading on when I first started doing research of the Golden Age. And then I read a little bit about the beginning of it, and I was like, oh, this guy had super soldier serum. This was cool. Until I was actually doing the realizing and research and realized, wait a minute, the super soldier serum was a retcon? And this is what really made me want to start diving into the Golden Age stories when I realized how many biographies of characters were retconned. The Destroyer, Captain America, Red Raven, the Angel, all these characters have retcon stories over the years when they get retellings, and the retellings become part of their current biology. That's why I love doing this research, so we can see exactly what they were when they first came out, and not what they were eventually turned into. This is another one. The Destroyer was a very interesting and popular enough superhero for the Golden Age, considering that he didn't fight the evils against America in America like most Golden Age characters. He actually stayed over in Berlin and Russia, or Germany, and fought the Nazis on their own home turf. That's what makes this character so interesting. There's a little bit of retconning from the 70s that we'll get into, and I'm not a fan of. But you can see where this character came from, what he eventually would turn into, and I honestly think that the retcon wasn't well deserved. They should have kept him who he was and then brought him back like they brought back other Golden Age heroes. But, we're still doing timely. I still hope that you send the requests in, because we've got more popular heroes to do that have been requested, and we'll get into some obscure ones if we get some time, like with the Phantom Bullet, which was very obscure. Okay, so let's get into the Destroyer on this Lost episode. Yeah, we're doing a video series. It would be an episode. On this episode of Lost Heroes of the Golden Age. The Destroyer, Kevin Keane Marlowe, first appeared in Mystic Comics number 6 in 1941. The publisher is obviously Tom Lee Comics, and he was created by Stan Lee and Jack Binder. Now, the Destroyer was never as popular as their big characters, Captain America with his partner, Human Torch and his partner, and Submariner, and to an extent the Angel. But he was popular enough that he appeared on every publication that Timely was doing right now, at the time, that involved superheroes. He was in Mystic Comics, All Winners Comics, USA Comics, the Daring Mystery Comics, All Select. So anything that they were doing right there, he either had a couple of stories or a number of stories. He did appear on a number of covers too. He wasn't always the featured story, but he did appear on a number of cover issues that he starred in. Now, the interesting thing about the Destroyer is, after he got his powers, he decided to stay in Berlin and in Nazi Germany and fight the Nazis on their home turf, where most of the American heroes would get their powers in the States. They would fight Nazis on their home ground. He fought Nazis on their home ground. He actually came very close to getting Hitler one time, but a bombing from the U.S. separated him from his target. Now, this would be the main thing for him. Now, we're going to go into his origin story, and you'll see where he gets his powers. But he stayed in Berlin and Germany for a good part of his career. Now, as we started gaining away from World War II and there was the decline of the superheroes, he actually came back into the U.S. and would find himself involved in fighting the Japanese and would even go over to Japan and fight them on their home turf for a while. And the stories of the Destroyer would end there. Now, I think that the Destroyer, this version, should have gone on and been as part of the storylines today. But there's the rub. In the 70s, they completely changed the Destroyer's storyline in a number of different ways. The first thing that we're going to go over is, in his origin story, he was put into a cell with a Nazi scientist, and they were later explained that this is the same scientist that gave Captain America, he worked with the same scientist that gave Captain America his powers. So, Kevin Marlowe was actually given a version of the super soldier serum. We would also find out that Kevin Marlowe was just an alias, and he is actually Brian Falsworth, where he is also the brother of Spitfire. And we would find out that Brian Falsworth was actually Union Jack. This version of Union Jack and Spitfire both did not appear until the 70s. So that's the next major change. He's no longer the newspaper publisher. That was the cover. And he is, Brian Falsworth, heir to the Union Jack secret identity that his father was before him. And let's see, he had a friend of his, Roger Alberry, who at first was a hero called Dynamite, which was, that's another story to go into. He was the hero Dynamite, and shortly after they rescued Roger and freed him from the brainwashing, Roger would become the Destroyer, while Brian, would go on to be Union Jack, and he would appear among a number of the stories with the Invaders, which was a publication in the 70s based on action taken in World War II, and he would become a part of them for a while. Now, in the 80s, they killed off Kevin/Brian in the Captain America comics number 253 and 254, and I have some pictures of here where they discuss this, where they said that he died in a car crash in 1953. Now, the most confusing thing I find about this is the Max Imprint story, which was a 5-part storyline of the Destroyer, written by Robert Kirkman. Don't get me wrong, I like Robert Kirkman, but I'm confused by this story because the Max Imprint not only brings up the Destroyer, but he is Kevin Marlowe. He is recruited by the government, and they want to use him because he still contains the super soldier serum in him. He's still strong, and he's still very capable. And he's married, he has a kid and a grandkid, and a former sidekick named Turret wasn't introduced before this. So I'm kind of curious to how Kevin Marlowe was alive in the future. Well, they went by Keen Marlowe, was alive in the future as a destroyer when it turned out that he was actually Brian Fallsworth that died in the 50s. Uh, I think maybe Robert Kirkman forgot about all that. I mean, until I was doing the research, I had no idea that the Destroyer was Union Jack. I was reading the Invader comics going, wait a minute, did you just completely retcon the Destroyer? And I read a little bit more. I was like, you did. Why? There was no point. Ken Marlowe could have gone on with being the Destroyer, and Brian Farnsworth could have been a brand new character. This retcon was completely unnecessary, and I'm not a fan of the retcon. But that is what they did with the Destroyer comics. So you've seen a little bit about the lead-in and what they did with him. Let's go ahead and cover his origin story so you can see what they were doing with him back in the 40s. One more thing that I did forget to mention, a number of the stories of him fighting the Nazis on their home turf and fighting the Japanese were actually Roger Alberry. Ken/Brian was actually the Destroyer for a short period of time. So a lot of these stories that we see take place in all these comic books was supposed to be Roger Alberry. So let's get into the origin story. The Destroyer, story by Stan Lee and by Jack Binder. The world is now engaged in a great war, a war which is slaying thousands of men, women, and children every day, a conflict which will not cease until either democracy or dictatorship is wiped from the face of the earth. But out of the chaos and destruction comes the mighty avenging figure, a man who has sworn never to rest until he has destroyed the Nazi hordes. Meet the Destroyer. Okay, so we start with our titular hero over in the Axis countries. Come on. Have a heart. Let us in. I'm sorry. Orders is no one to get inside. You better now. Quick. Oh, okay. Okay, today the newspapers of the world are allowed to receive no news from inside Germany. Only false and accurate reports of German official news agencies are released. Well, of course, they don't want their actions being known. And so, to the outside world, the happenings of Nazi Germany are cloaked in secrecy and veiled in the depths of murky mystery. But one day, a wave of sabotage sweeps Germany. Okay, so we start off with the Destroyer right here first. You fools, you swine, you've let the place be blown up right under your very noses. When I'm around, nothing happenings. Okay, you're a German in Germany talking to other German soldiers. Why are you speaking English? I know it's for the benefit of the readers, but when you're speaking a different language, you usually put like hyphens or something around your speech so we know that you're speaking another language, and then you don't have to write it with terrible V's and W's. Okay, while he's complaining at his troops, the whole thing blows up. Who is this massive saboteur? Where did he come from? Let us look back a few months and we see that let's see, I'm going to send you to Germany to write an inside story about what's really happening over there. I want you to write the truth about Nazi Germany. Gosh, that's great. When do I start? That's great. You know there's a war going on. You're happy about this? Okay, so he actually gets assigned the story before we get introduced to who he is. And so, later, we find Ken Marlowe, reporter, disembark at Hamburg, Germany. So he disembarks and he makes his way straight to one of the prison camps. And let's see, I'll visit will be the Strom prison. I'm not sure of that prison. Okay, as he tries to get in, he is told by the guard that he needs to get out of there. So he decides to break in, and he's remarkably fit for a reporter. So he does get to the other side of the wall for the prison without anybody seeing him. I'd really like to know what your plan was. You're going to get in there. You obviously don't look like a prisoner. There's only so far you're going to be able to get or do anything. I mean, you're not even undercover at this point. Well, as he gets in there, he trips an alarm, and they bum rush him, and they take him prisoner, and they think that he is a spy. I mean, it wouldn't... I wouldn't disagree with that. He looks like he is a spy. He's breaking into the facility. There's no way that he'd be able to hide out among this prison wearing a suit like this. So they want to take him into the dungeon, and he doesn't like that. Put me in a torture chamber, will you? I'll show you Nazis what one man can do, and I swear that looks like a plunger. He's fighting them with a plunger. Okay, he seems to be getting the upper hand on the Nazis, and then this, I guess, one that had a monocle hits him from behind. The cowardly Nazi fells. The fighting reporter. The fighting reporter. That would be a key name. He knocks him out and he throws him into the jail cell. Let's see. Later on, spy my eye. You're spy my eye. You're crazy. I'm an American newspaper man looking for a story. I found out you are only half English. You try to fool us with lies, eh? We'll show you. Get out their whips, man. Serious, that was egregious. Anyway, they start to whip him, and they're trying to make him talk. Meanwhile, another part of the prison, we see a strange sight. Professor Eric Schmidt, the world's famous biochemist, dared to defy the Nazis. Okay, so yeah, he was identified, just right there. Very, very briefly. Okay, so, as they're trying to torture and make Kevin Marlowe speak, they're also talking to the scientist Schmidt, who refuses to give up his formula to them. He says he's not going to say, I will not give you my secret. You will use it to make soldiers powerful and damage throughout the world. You fool, you will give us a discovery or we will put you in the dungeon to rot. Why are you speaking English to each other? I mean, you're obviously speaking English because you're changing your W's to V's. And that's how Russians speak English. That's not how they talk to each other. Anyways, they take away the scientist and they throw him in the prison cell with Kevin Marlowe. Now, the scientist isn't much left for this world, but he wants to give Kevin Marlowe the secret. So he tells him the combination, because the way this bottle is rigged is if you put in the wrong combination, a vat of acid will be released onto the serum and destroy it. You have to put in the right combination to disable the trap to be able to get the formula out. See, it even says it. The bottle of acid is above the serum so that the wrong number is turned, the acid spills. So he gets the right number and he drinks the formula. And he all of a sudden, well, all right, you rats, you've killed the old man, but he's fooled you in anyway because you haven't got his discovery. He's calling himself the Destroyer right now. And in the meantime, Nazis return to Ken and the Professor. Then they say they'll make them both talk, and Kevin breaks out of the prison and starts fighting the Nazis, and he's even more efficient this time than he was before, given the superpowers that he has. Now, as he races out of the prison, he sees all these prisoners lined up. You have been found guilty of treason against the government. For that, you must die. Ready, machine gun, aim. Without a second thought, Ken attacks the gunners. You cold-blooded dogs, take that. And he starts to fight all the Nazis and frees the prisoners. And this is where we get an idea of what he wants to do. Later, outside the prison, you are all free now, free to escape to some other nation like the United States, where you will be treated like men. Goodbye and good luck. Leaving the prisoner behind, Kane races away into the night. Let's see. I could go back to the U.S. with a story about the prisoners that would knock their hats off. You could send it through other means, couldn't you? Like mail it or telegraph it? Anyways. But I feel I have a mission here. I promised the old professor to fight Nazism, and I'm going to do it. So he talks about how he's going to design a costume so that nobody knows who he is. Nobody knows who you are. You're a reporter that was only seen by one prison, and you captured them. I mean, how many people in Germany know you? Anyways, he designs this costume and he becomes a destroyer. How long did it take you to design that costume? Were you letting innocent women and children be beaten in the streets while you designed this costume? That obviously wasn't made overnight. I mean, look at the intricacies and designs of this and the skull that you had to paint on the front of it. Okay, so as he's going, he sees this woman being attacked in the streets and he descends upon the Nazis and breaks it up. A few socks might improve you a little too, and he attacks them and he leads them to chase after him to leave the woman alone, knocks them all out, and he says, now to leave my trademark, the mark of the destroyer. So he takes his time to design this costume and design a calling card before he started fighting the Nazis. Now it says a month later in the room of a German state building we find, now okay, pause for a second. If it had said a month later and then they showed the secret identity and the calling card, that would make sense. But he did this before he even started fighting people. I mean, you could have said a month later, as he's fighting criminals, he designs the costume and the... anyways. I tell you, Hen Frederick, we must do something about this destroyer. He has already wrecked 20 of our armories and 9 bridges, and he has licked over 100 of our best troops. So they call on Herr Frederick, who they believe will be the one that is going to be able to take down the destroyer. Now, he says he only wants 10 men to help him, and he only wants the best. So he picks out the 10, and then the destroyer, he shows up all of a sudden. And he's pulling what looks like a knife out of his shoulder blade. I mean, even if that's where you have it tucked in so you can use it later, that's an odd place to keep a weapon. Okay, so he throws the dagger at Herr Frederick, and he's, get back, you fools. Do you want to be killed? And apparently Kevin is standing in just the right spot so that when he triggers this lever, he plunges through a trap door. That's awfully convenient. Anyways, I don't have a problem with this place being rigged, but the fact that he just happened to be standing on the trap door is awfully convenient. Okay, so the let's see, you fell into a tunnel, I guess, a little well. It starts to fill up with water. Goodbye, you destroyer. Ha ha. Now, this is a really unusual way to free yourself. He sticks the dagger into the trap door, and then he puts the dagger on his chin, and with all his might, I guess held it against the sides of the tunnel, he pushes the knife to knock the top off. If this place was so compact that you could actually just hold the width of your body, using the knife was completely unnecessary. You didn't need to do all that. There were a number of other ways that you could have freed this. Now, we find out that the water actually overflows the trap that he's in. See, what did he call this? And it's just a trap. So we find out that the water is overflowing. There's another way you could have gotten out. The water overflowed. You could have swam your way to the top. Let's see, the rats have left, it seems. Well, I'll have a surprise for them. When they return, I'll just push the switch as far as it goes. Okay, maybe the water didn't start overflowing until the destroyer, supercharged the switch. Destroyer is unaware of the Nazi behind him, but he sees the reflection in the water and attacks the guy from behind him. He gives him a nice wallop and lies him straight out. As Herr Frederick returns back, the water is pouring out of the door and of the window. Returning home later, Von Bager and his men find, sorry, I couldn't wait. Von Bager? I thought he was Herr Frederick. That says Von Bager throws the switch. Anyways. The note. Sorry I couldn't wait for you, Von Bager. I am afraid you will find your house rather damp, the Destroyer. And so the Destroyer speeds away, ever on the search for new adventure. And, this is how it would go for a while, fighting the Nazis over in Berlin. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you liked a little bit of the history lesson. I learned far more about the Destroyer while doing the research than I ever knew before, and realized that I didn't know much about him at all. But I do hope that you enjoyed this story. I'm going to be doing some more dives into some not as popular as the big characters, but diving into them and maybe coming up with some stuff that you didn't know. So if there is any other characters that you want to see while we're doing this series, you can go ahead and let me know in the comment section. And we got a good one coming up next week. Until next time, I'll be seeing you.